We are just weeks away from November's elections. Democrats today picked up some major endorsements, including one that Republicans were actually hoping for. We begin our team coverage tonight with Spectrum News 13's Greg Angel. He's here in the studio with us tonight. What can you tell us, Greg?
Well, as we know, it has been a year since Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico, and in that time, hundreds of thousands of Puerto Ricans have moved to Florida, now likely reshaping and reshifting Florida politics. And that is why today's endorsement could prove significant. The mass devastation across Puerto Rico was predictable, but the wrath of Hurricane Maria on Florida politics nearly a year later was not.
Many people helped, and I am grateful to all of them.
Puerto Rico's Governor Ricardo Rossello in Central Florida today giving his endorsement to two top-running Democrats, Bill Nelson for U.S. Senate and Andrew Gillum for governor.
We've got educational, cultural, economic exchanges with each other, and that they're never going to be far from home when they're here in the state of Florida.
There was a point hurricane that there was no money for Puerto Rico, and I put my foot down and I said, this is not right.
It's an endorsement that Nelson's Senate challenger, Republican Governor Rick Scott, was hoping to win.
Soy demócrata y estoy con el gobernador Rick Scott.
His campaign today just released this Hispanic ad featuring self-proclaimed Democrats who are supporting Scott. There's also the list of political supporters. Governor Rossello says the political tide turned when, as he sees it, the GOP-led Congress refused to help the island territory. Governor Rossello gives credit to Nelson for helping to get more than $18 billion in aid. Rossello says his endorsement is one of equality, whereas Puerto Rico wants and needs support to one day become the nation's 51st state.
How can we have a territory that has voted twice for statehood, yet it falls on deaf ears? And again, it's an issue of equality and having this equal treatment. So I feel that both men understand this concept, and that has driven me towards the support.
And it is that support that Democrats are hoping can tip the scales of these narrow races just enough to win in November. But will it work? For that part of the story, we want to turn over to Spectrum News' Capitol correspondent Samantha-Jo Roth, joining us live now in Washington. Samantha-Jo?
Well, Greg, while a major endorsement like this one could make a difference in the race, experts I've spoken with today say they do not believe it will turn the tide in the midterm election.
The reason that Puerto Ricans are influential in Florida politics is because it's such a closely divided state.
That we can appreciate all that you have done.
Senator Bill Nelson now has a new feather in his cap with the highly sought-after endorsement of Puerto Rican Governor Ricardo Rossello. But will this carry the incumbent senator over the finish line?
I think people look at endorsements as a sign of momentum, potentially.
Alex Canant, a Republican strategist and former on Senator Marco Rubio's presidential campaign, knows firsthand that endorsements don't always translate into wins.
I don't think anyone's ever won an election because they had the most endorsements. I mean, when Marco Rubio ran for president, we had a lot of endorsements, but it didn't do us a whole lot of good at the actual ballot box.
While Governor Rossello has cultivated relationships with officials on both sides of the aisle, he identifies as a Democrat, which is why Canant believes the endorsement isn't surprising.
I mean, Democrats endorsing Democrats isn't really news. At the end of the day, what matters is the candidates and their message to voters.
Monday's endorsement comes on the heels of 3 recent polls that show Nelson leading Scott overall and with Hispanic voters. Could this be a sign that the race is shifting in the incumbent senator's direction?
Concluding that one endorsement would encourage an entire voting bloc to vote the same way it doesn't make sense. Puerto Rican voters are not all going to vote the same way.
But with Election Day only 35 days away, experts believe what happens in this final stretch will certainly be on the minds of voters as they head to the polls.
In a race that's going to be as razor thin as the Florida Senate race is expected to be, of course, anything will help.
Well, another key question here, will this very important voting bloc turn up at the polls on Election Day? That is still unclear. We may get some more clarity in the next week with voter registration deadline just around the corner. We're live tonight on Capitol Hill. Samantha-Jo Roth, Spectrum.